However, looking at the consultant's expression, it didn't seem like he was joking at all.
Does Frazer really know Henry Wilson? Hostess wondered.
Frazer, how did this car get here? Tell me the truth, Natalia said as she glared at him. She knew very well that Henry had seen how he had been rewarded for selling the 100 properties. Now he's given him a car, and the company's treating him as one of their own, she wondered. Frazer had given her the rest of the money he had made after selling the properties, so he didn't have anything left. He chuckled as he pulled Natalia aside and whispered, "He owed me a huge favor, so I borrowed a car for you to drive." Only borrowed, she thought. What a fool I'm married to. Frazer, you really are something, she exclaimed. It was a big favor, yet you only borrowed a car? I'm just trying to help you save face, he said. Save face? How much is that worth? You wasted your big favor just to help me gain some face? Do you know how few people in San Clemente get the chance to speak with someone so important? Natalia continued being oblivious to his love. She was furious. She had hoped Frazer would use his contract to their best advantage. However, he had only borrowed a car and wasted his great opportunity. Everyone heard him say that the car was only borrowed. They took advantage of the situation just like they did with his previous vehicle. So it's just a loan, said Pearl, laughing. I was wondering how someone could be so capable while appearing to be so dumb. The group of people roared with laughter and drove away in the expensive car. As for Natalia, she angrily took a taxi back home and pondered on the idea that in a previous life, she must have committed many sins to have ended up with such an unambitious, good-for-nothing husband. The vehicle consultant was completely stupefied. He hadn't felt it was his place to interrupt the family's argument, so he asked, Mr. Macklemore, didn't you buy the car? Don't let anyone know about this, said Frazer. So, Mr. Macklemore likes to keep a low profile, the consultant thought. He didn't show any emotion when facing the family's mockery, so he must have an extraordinary identity. When Frazer arrived home, he saw Natalia sitting on the couch in a bad mood. He went over to her and said, Natalia, just now. She didn't look at him but gave a cold snort, got up, and went to her room, slamming the door behind her. He was used to it. He shrugged helplessly and went back to his own room to sleep. It was already late into the night when Frazer's phone rang. Apart from Natalia, there weren't many people who would ever bother to call him. He picked up his phone and saw that it was a phone number without a name on it. However, his expression instantly turned cold. He was familiar with the number. He had deleted the owner of the number from his contacts list some time before. The owner of that number was a man called Ben Macklemore. Frazer's father had a total of 18 sons, and Frazer was the youngest of them. The other 17 were all his half-brothers. As the youngest, Frazer had been the most doted on. Because of that, he had never been liked by his brothers. However, there was one exception. That person was Ben, who was his 9th brother. Ever since he was young, Ben had always been nice to Frazer, helping him out with everything. Unexpectedly, the one brother he had been closest to had been plotting against him for a long time. Although Ben had always pretended to care for Frazer, he had really been using him. When Frazer became old enough and was about to take over part of the family's power, Ben had laid down a set of traps to frame him. Although Frazer had managed to avoid the traps, he had found that everything that should have belonged to him belonged to Ben instead. Ever since, Frazer had given Ben the cold shoulder, and since he had never wanted to pursue fame and fortune, he had decided to leave his family and run away from them. Memories of the past flashed through his mind like a movie. Before answering, He stared at the familiar number on the screen for a long time. "Little brother, you finally answered the phone," Ben cried. "I thought you were asleep." "Hello," Frazer said shortly. "Are you listening, 18? Ben asked, using his favorite nickname for Frazer. Hearing the familiar form of address, Frazer felt disgusted. He said, "Don't call me that anymore. I didn't think you would have the nerve to phone me again." Ben laughed and said, "I thought you would have realized by now that I don't have any shame." "Yes, I know that you're shameless. Why are you bothering me now?" Frazer asked bluntly. "I heard that you changed your mind and that you're preparing to return to the family. If that's true, then I think your decision is a bit unwise. Although you are nothing in the outside world, at least your life is not in danger. But once you return, half the family will do what I ask, whether it's in the open or in the dark. Have you thought about that?" Frazer didn't reply, so Ben continued. "I know that you can fight, but are you really going to fight me alone?" Frazer clenched his fist. This guy lied to me for so many years, he thought. At one time, he almost caused my death. Now he's threatening me again. Does he really believe that he can still dominate me? On the other end of the line, Ben puffed on his cigar and said, "I'll give you two choices. You can either continue hiding your true identity and continue to be a nobody, or you can come alone to see me. If you choose to come here, remember not to let anyone know where you're going." Frazer laughed bitterly. There was no need to talk about the first choice. As for the second, he knew that if he went into Ben's territory, the only outcome would be a silent and tragic death. "What if I do things my own way?" Frazer stated. "Oh, 18. I remember that you and your mother were always on good terms, weren't you?" Frazer sat up straight. His mother had been missing since he was 18 years old. Was my mother's disappearance related to Ben? He wondered. "I always loved my mother," Frazer said. "Do you know what will happen to you if I find out that you were involved in her disappearance?" Ben released a puff of smoke and said nonchalantly, "Go ahead and report it and see if the old man will believe you. If you want to know more about your mother, come and find me. We can have a nice chat about it." "Tell me now, you bastard," Frazer cursed, but Ben had already hung up. When he tried to call him back, he could not get through. Because Sheila's soundproofing wasn't very good, a few moments later there was a murmur outside his door. "Hey, be quiet in there, or I'll make sure that you end up sleeping in the street," Sheila snapped threateningly. Frazer quickly calmed down and started to analyze what Ben had said. He reasoned that his mother's disappearance had probably had nothing to do with him. His mother hadn't been an ordinary woman. She had seemed gentle on the outside, but was actually very powerful. Even though Ben had a lot of power in the family, he wouldn't have been able to affect her. However, Frazer suspected that Ben knew what had happened to her. Frazer had always wanted to find his mother and reunite with her. He clenched his fists, and his nails dug into the flesh as he muttered, "Ben, you wait. When I become strong enough, I'll come and find you. And I believe that day will be soon." The next day, Frazer woke up early. The previous night's incident had disturbed him badly. He had decided to return to the family and needed to prepare himself for that. Frazer first returned to the neighborhood where he had lived previously. He saw 3 people sitting near a street corner, playing cards on a concrete table. He went up to them just as they were finishing their game. The first to see him was a tall, thin guy named Ian Taylor. When he saw Frazer, he froze for a second and then immediately punched him lightly on the chest. "Frazer! How are you doing, kid? I heard that you were chased out of your home by your father-in-law. I was about to call you and arrange for us to get together," Ian spoke loudly. The other two also greeted Frazer warmly. He had always felt comfortable with the three of them and often spent time with them when he had nothing else to do. The names of the other two were Liam Young and Brett Andrews. Brett had been classmates with Frazer back in college, and he had become an exceptionally good programmer. He started a technology company with Frazer after the two of them had graduated. However, the company hadn't lasted long.
To watch the full episode, install the Pocket FM app